When you do a real estate transaction, over 100 pages of legal stuff are going to find their way into your hands. And disclosures are an important part of that. Hi, I'm Don Reedy. The purchase or sale of a home is made up of lots of forms. The contract and the listing agreement among them, and they're probably the most important. But today we'll be discussing disclosures and advisories. All right, what are disclosures and advisories? I'm asked this all the time. What's most important about disclosures and advisories is that they're not agreements. I'm not asking you to agree to do X for Y. Instead, I'm just disclosing I live next to Brian, and I'm advising. I'm saying something like, you know, you better look at this before you actually buy it. Disclosures and advisories are an important part of seeing to it that you're protected when you're buying a home or selling a home. So let's look at some of the disclosures and advisories, take a look at how important they are, how they impact the actual sale and purchase, and most importantly, how they impact you.
All right. Section 10 of the Residential Purchase Agreement talks about statutory disclosures. Those are required by law, and believe me, there's plenty of others that we're going to talk about. But highlighted in yellow here are some of them. The lead-based paint disclosure, if there is an older home, is there lead-based paint there? Real estate transfer disclosure statement, where the client, the seller, tells us you know, that the creek next door floods, or he once had a fire and they replaced it. The natural hazards disclosure, which I believe we discussed earlier. Even the agents do an agent's visual inspection, where we go through and look at things that perhaps you might not see. The big X here is an indication that for sellers, they absolutely have to provide these disclosures. The only exception to that is, let's say, for example, a bank purchased a home back in a foreclosure. The bank never lived in the home, and they don't really have any knowledge about it, and so they are exempt from this. There's a seller property questionnaire. Again, the seller fills this out describing anything that's wrong with the property, so that you have a right to know that. Sellers also provide home energy rating pamphlets down here, which are can come back to bite you if you're a seller and you're not paying attention to that. Sellers are also required to do a withholding tax disclosure to let the government know that they either believe that they do or they don't owe taxes on the property after the sale. So let's look at some more of the statutory requirements. Megan's Law is a database of sexual offenders. That's available online, but it's important before you buy a house that if that's a concern of yours, you can go through Megan's database and determine who and where registered sex offenders live. If you're aware, or the seller is aware of any gas lines or hazardous pipelines, that has to be disclosed to you as well. And finally, on the statutory disclosures, condominiums present a bit of a problem sometimes, and the reason for that is condominiums often have HOA documents that will reflect that, for instance, a condominium is ready for a major do-over or workover, and that could be a substantial amount of money. Additionally, you're looking to see if there's any lawsuits against the condominium. Sometimes if there's been a fire or some other disaster, there may be a lawsuit that's against the association. So these will be presented to you to look at and review, so that you don't end up buying in a condominium project that is going to cost you unneeded or unwarranted money. There's some other disclosures and advisories that we're going to cover in later videos. I just want to point them out right now. One is disclosure regarding real estate agency. We're going to do a whole video on agency. That's really going to be cool, and you're really going to like it. Possible representation of a buyer and seller. That's, for instance, if both the seller's agent and the buyer's agent both work for the same brokerage. There's some different rules that apply there. And finally, the buyer's inspection advisory, which is a whole list of obligations, if you will, for the buyer to do his or her due diligence if they end up having a problem later on.
All right, time for some tips and tricks. Let's start with sellers. Sellers, here's the tip of the day. Disclose, disclose, disclose. I'm not a lawyer, but if you lie or hold back information, you're likely to need one if you get found out. Buyers, this is your chance to investigate and explore what you can't know just by looking at the house. Go over these forms with a fine-tooth comb. Look at the advisories. Talk with each other about what they actually mean. Take advantage of these disclosures and these advisories. Thanks for watching this video on this topic and all of our videos on real estate. Look, if you've got a comment or a question on real estate or this particular episode, just click down below on the comments section and I'll get right back to you. Like us, subscribe to the channel for more real estate information guaranteed to make you a smarter buyer or smarter seller. I'm Don Reedy, the most interesting man in real estate.